Kaleidoscope.
Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise. Okay, now I'm very, very excited to be here because, like I said, we're having a very important and interesting conversation about why young people are not vaccinated or why young people are so hesitant to be vaccinated or to get the vaccine. Okay, which is a very important and it is, in fact, a growing problem here in the United Kingdom. So, that is something that we need to focus on as well. All right. So if you're someone who is hesitant to go get the vaccine, if you know someone who's hesitant to go get the vaccine, well, you know the place that you can ask them to get some advice from is definitely here right here on Relax Radio. Okay, send them over our way. We can make sure that they are aware of why they need to take the vaccine, why they probably shouldn't be so doubtful about it, and what exactly it means if you take the vaccine and you protect what exactly it means if they take the vaccine, right? Because if you take the vaccine, what's going to happen is that it's definitely just going to help a lot of the other people, or it's going to help what's going to happen is going to it's not just going to help them, but it's going to help their families as well. So make sure you stay tuned. If you have any friends, if you have any young people who are hesitant to get vaccinated, well, you know what to do. Make sure to send them my way. Okay, now before we head into our conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can get in touch with me. Make sure to text me on 07852473473 because I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know what you're feeling as well. Okay, so don't forget to do that. Don't forget to share your thoughts and your opinions with us, because you can in fact do anything that you want. Make sure that you share your thoughts with us as well, so don't forget to do that. Now, before we actually head back into our conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can in fact be a part of the show, and all you need to do is just go follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Like us on Facebook, follow us on the rest of it, and subscribe to us on YouTube, because that's definitely going to make sure that you are a part of the show, that you're involved in the conversation, and you're always making sure that you're contributing your thoughts, your opinions to us right here on Relax Radio. Okay, now before we actually head back into the conversation, you can actually download the app too, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. That way, you can make sure that you're always tuning into the conversation, you're always listening to the conversation, because that way you can make sure you're informed and educated, right? And who does not want to be? I mean, obviously, who wants to you want to look like you're the person that knows everything, right? Because I definitely do, especially when it comes to my friend group. I'm always the one that's aware about everything that happens in the world, okay, which is pretty cool. I mean, I love boasting about it, and you can do that too. All you need to do is just be a part of this show. Tune into Relax Radio, because we will make sure that you are aware about everything that happens, okay? Now, before we actually head back into our conversation, or rather, we'll head into our conversation right now. Let's talk about why there is so much of vaccine hesitancy among the youth, right? Now, the UK is in fact finding young people much, much more reluctant to take COVID-19 vaccines than adults, right? Which means that the next stage of the fight against coronavirus is in fact getting much, much more complicated, and that is not something we want. Okay, please go get your vaccine. It's not cool, and we need to make sure that we can get through this. So, and the way for us to get through this is quite simple. Go get your vaccine. I know you're not, I mean, I know you haven't got it, so go get it. I'm looking at you. Yeah, go get the vaccine. All right. Don't forget to go get your vaccine. So, like I said, some 14% of kids, rather, between the ages of 16 to 17 are in fact very, very hesitant to get vaccinated here in the UK. Okay, so why exactly do you think they are so hesitant? Because I want to know what you're thinking, right? Because I'm here to share my thoughts as well, but I want to know why you think children, especially younger kids, are in fact, much, much more hesitant to go get the vaccine. Right now, I have a lot more to tell you about why they're hesitant, but obviously, for us to do that, I need you to share your thoughts with me as well, right? And that's the only way we can have a conversation, so make sure you do that right now. Like I said, there is in fact a lot of vaccine hesitancy among children, which means that the vaccine hesitancy right now is in fact 10 points higher for children than for adults. And this is 10 points, right? 10. It's not a small amount. It's quite a large amount, right? And it's in fact the first time the Office for National Statistics has in fact looked at a younger population in its monthly research because of the pandemic, because of how much of a vaccine hesitancy there is right now. Okay, and something else we need to focus on, and something else I feel like we need to talk about as well, is this whole idea where young people tend to think that because they're fit and they're healthy, they don't really need vaccines. No. Why do you think that? Look, I understand, there's a lot of reasons why they think that, right? And let's talk about some of them as well. But we need to understand that even though this sort of mindset is very prevalent among young kids because of the way COVID 19 has been portrayed, and how we've always portrayed it in a way where we think that, we think that only older people are vulnerable, that younger people are much, much more immune to the disease. That's really not the case, right? Because even though that's the case, yeah, I mean, even though there is a higher rate for older people to get infected or get, to contract the disease, it doesn't necessarily mean that younger kids are completely not vulnerable, right? Because you are, and we know even in instances when you got the vaccine, that really wasn't the case. So you definitely need to go get that vaccine. If you're young and you haven't got that vaccine and you're having a lot of hesitancy about it, there are so many people you can contact. Call them, text them, whatever it is. I mean, come on, you're always on your phone, right? So call them, text them, do whatever you have to do to clear all of your doubts. But don't ever think that you don't want the vaccine because you're not healthy, right? Because I've heard so many stories of so many young people who refuse to get the vaccine, you know, um, eventually ending up in the ICU, and then them having to, them struggling so much. At that point, they would ask for the vaccine, but at that point, it's already too late. Okay, so we don't want that happening to you. So if you are hesitant about getting the vaccine, make sure that you if you make sure that you clear all the doubts you have. If you have uncertainties, talk to people, ask them questions, and they will definitely help you out as well. Okay, now make sure you stay tuned, because right now we're actually going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to keep talking about this. So until then, make sure you stay tuned. Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise, and we're having a very important conversation about vaccine hesitancy, right? And the reason we're obviously having this conversation is because currently we've seen how there is a lot of hesitancy, especially among young people, when it comes to vaccine hesitancy, right? So we're discussing why exactly are people so hesitant, right? Why are people so against this whole thought of getting an injection? Look, if you can get piercings and tattoos, I definitely think you can go get yourself an injection. then I mean, I don't know, I'm just saying. Okay, because it's pretty much the same thing. Okay, except in this instance, vaccines actually protect you, right? So if you're all for, getting piercings and getting tattoos, I think you can definitely go and get a vaccine. It's not hard. You definitely can do that. Okay. Now, that's why I want to encourage this sort of. That's why I want to encourage people to go and get the vaccine as well, because it's important for us to actually understand why we are going to take the vaccine. Okay. Now, let's talk about why exactly young people are so hesitant to get the vaccine. Okay. Now, look, how many instances have you heard of young people just coming about and saying, oh, well, you know what? Like, I'm totally fit and healthy and I'm so young. I'm definitely not going to get COVID. So I don't need to get the vaccine. It's completely pointless and I can just give the vaccine to someone else who needs it. Well, okay, it's nice of you to think that way. It's very selfless of you to think that you can give it to someone who deserves it. But you deserve it too, right? And this is not just because you're young and healthy and well and fit, but the truth is, it doesn't matter how young or old you are. You need that vaccine. That's why you need to go get that vaccine. Okay. And this sort of mindset is, in fact, making it very hard, not just for the government, but for the rest of the country to actually progress as a whole and get past this virus, right? And the reason I'm telling you that is actually because right now things are actually getting, things are tough, right? Let's be honest. Because of restrictions being eased, because of travelers being allowed to come to the England, especially from the 2nd of August, which is what we're going to be talking about next. Especially with all of these changes that are happening, it's in fact very, very hard to be safe, right? So the only way you can actually assure yourself or tell yourself that you have at least a slight chance of better immunity is by getting the jab. Okay, so don't forget to get the jab right here. Yeah, go get that jab. And I honestly want to make sure that you're safe. I want to make sure that you always prioritize your health and your well being. Okay, now let's talk about some statistics, because I feel like if I give you some statistics, you'll understand how grave this situation is, right? Now, according to NHS England data, which is up to the 22nd of July, only 66%, or about 5.6 million of 18 to 29-year-olds in England have had their first jab. Okay, and when you compare this with all the adults who got their jab as well, that's about 88% of adults. Okay, so there is in fact a significant gap between the adults who got vaccinated and and the young children who got vaccinated, right? And that gap is in fact quite alarming, because it is in fact quite a significant gap, right? Now let's talk about some reasons for vaccine hesitancy, because I feel like this is something we need to discuss as well. Now, first of all, there is a lot of information or misinformation, if I put it well, put it out there, especially on the internet, right? And let's face it, what do you do when you're at home? Well, guess what? You use this, dude, and you're constantly scrolling your phone. You're constantly scrolling down your social media and whatnot. And obviously, in instances like that, what happens is you tend to get a lot of misinformation. And let's face it, until recently, it was only recently that Instagram had the whole fact checking mechanism, right? And because of so much of misinformation that is there, it gets very hard for these children, especially young children, to sort of distinguish between what exactly they need to do and what exactly they don't need to do, right? Because I said, sometime back we had this whole conversation as well. We had this whole discussion about misinformation, conspiracy theories, anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers. We had that whole conversation, right? So you know what I'm talking about. And a lot of other people within the scientific community has also argued that this public health messaging that we had when the pandemic initially began, oh, older people are more vulnerable, younger people are not so vulnerable, they're much more immune, so they don't have a risk. You remember that campaign that we had, that messaging that we had? Well, that has detrimental effects, right? Because that is in fact one of the main reasons that younger people are refusing to get vaccinated, or they have so much of hesitancy when it comes to getting vaccinated. And it's obviously because of how there has been this messaging where it says young people are not that vulnerable. Okay, now, that's a big, big issue as well, right? And another reason for vaccine hesitancy is, in fact, there's this false sense of security that you have when you're young, right? You tend to think, and you know what? That false sense of security is, in fact, perpetuated by that the whole messaging campaigns that we had that said, young people are quite immune to the disease, or they're not that vulnerable, right? And that's the thing, right? What happens is when you have that sort of imaging that is conducted, that also perpetuates this false sense of security, because you then begin to think that just because you're young, you're not going to get the disease. But the truth is that's not really the case, because we know right now, we've seen as well, that people from younger age groups do have COVID, and it's in fact quite rampant, right? So we need to make sure that we're telling our kids, we need to make sure we're telling all the young people out there that they are taking the correct steps to make sure that they're much, much safe. Okay. Now make sure you stay tuned, because right now we're going to head into a small break. And after that, we will be back to keep talking about, we will be back to keep talking about COVID-19, what exactly is going to change for the people in England, especially when these new, regulations are introduced as well, especially in terms of travel. Okay. So make sure you stay tuned.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. Why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, how much it's changed, especially